Thank you all for having me tonight. As Lucretia mentioned, I was fortunate enough to be blessed with a speaking opportunity at TEDx Charlotte in 2016. The title of my message was What Trauma Taught Me About Resilience. And in that talk, I spoke on some of the unfortunate things that led to me winning the resilience lottery, so to speak. For those who haven't seen it yet, I spoke on the difficulties with having a mother who was a drug addict. Living in the projects in Oakland, California, living in a drug house, in a dope house at one point, seeing violence on a normal basis. My dad was murdered when I was 10 years old. He was in prison at the time. My grandmother raised me from age 8 until the middle of my senior year of high school or so. And maybe 6 months to a year or so after my father was murdered, I was riding home from school one day, public transit, with a couple of my friends. And, kids can be cruel. And I'm not sure if any of you guys did this, but, we did, jokes. Some of those jokes might turn into your mama jokes, right? Well, one of my good friends took it a little step further. Knowing that my father had recently passed, he said, "Your daddy." And immediately a rage came over me, and I tried to chase him and get to him, but it was his stop, and he was getting off the bus, and he said it as he was getting off the stairs. So that rage was actually pain. It's hurt. So I got home, and I'm in tears. I cried the whole way home. I got home, and my grandmother sat me down as I told her the story of what happened. The first thing she did was to pull out the Bible. She went to Psalms 37:1. Never forget it. "Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be envious of the workers of iniquity." All right? At that time, couldn't quite grasp the full meaning of it, but it always stuck with me. That was my favorite scripture, so to speak. Probably for a good 2 decades plus. I've since developed an affinity for a different scripture. It's my new favorite scripture. That scripture is Romans 8:28. Any of my Bible scholars know what that is? It's up on the board. And we know that all things work together for good for those who love Him, those who are called by His purpose. That became my scripture. And that scripture took on even more meaning as I built out my own business, the Audacity Firm, where a core of what we do is build resilience. That scripture is the foundation of resilience. And so there's several key points of resilience that scripture brings to mind. And I want to share them with you really quick. So, if we can keep that scripture up. The first is around perspective. The way that we look at things, the way that we orient ourselves to things, becomes very, very important. The scripture shows you that it's all going to work together for good. We know this. So all it takes for us to do is to have the proper outlook as we encounter the various trials and tribulations that we have. Second point, positivity. Why should I be positive about it? I'm in the midst of some very painful, very traumatic things. And we know. So whatever it is that I'm going through doesn't minimize the immediacy and the pain that I feel right now. But what I do know, it's going to work together for good. So I have a reason to have a positive outlook. I have a reason to look forward to better days. Partnership. Partnership. Where do you get partnership in this scripture? Who is it going to work out to good for? Those. Those is not singular. That's a group. There's a collective of people to which those things are going to come together for. It's everyone who is called by his purpose. Everyone who loves him. It's a collective. There's a partnership here. There's also a partnership in making sure that you are getting the proper assistance to deal with whatever adversity you are facing. One of the things that I had to realize about myself is that you can't go through and experience the type of pain, the type of trauma that I went through and emerge completely unscathed. There is a price to be paid at some point in time. And I need to get assistance to help with that. I needed to get partners to help with that. Those partners might be family, it might be friends, it could be professional help. The only way that those things are going to work together for good is if you surround yourself with the people who can help you. The importance of perseverance. Continuing to chug through, continuing to grind through. You know why? When you look at that verse, when does it say it's going to happen? When does it say it's going to work for good? It doesn't. There's no time bound on when it's going to work for good. So in the meantime, sometimes it's going to be easy, sometimes it's going to be difficult. When it gets difficult, you must work through it. And finally, purpose. There's a purpose in everything that we encounter. There's a purpose in everything that we encounter. The scripture directly tells us so. It's going to work out for good. It's up to you to orient yourself and your outlook towards that good. It's been a very, very difficult challenge, a very, very difficult life at times. But one thing that I know is that through everything that I've experienced in the past and everything that I'm to experience going forward, eventually it's going to come together. Thank you.